I moved off-grid to escape people like her, but she followed me into the woods with a clipboard, a drone, and a fake violation notice. Then she tried to steal power from my generator, not knowing I'd wired it to shock anyone who tied it without permission. She screamed, ran, and came back with backup, but by the time she tried to burn it all down, the cameras were rolling, and when the video hit 1,000,000 views, her HOA empire started to collapse. The power grab begins from the story. HOA Karen steals my cabin generator power. Didn't know it's wired to shock intruders like her. Nestled deep in the pine-studded foothills of the Cascades, my off-grid cabin had become my refuge from the chaos of city life. After years of scraping together money and spending countless weekends hand-building it, this place wasn't just a getaway, it was a symbol of freedom. No traffic, no noise, no neighbors. At least, that was the plan 3 months ago. Everything changed when the land across the stream was bought out by a newly developed rustic-themed HOA. Where there were once deer paths and silence, there were now concrete driveways, decorative mailboxes, and freshly planted lawns pretending to be natural. And with them came the enforcer of all things manicured and miserable, Karen. Her name wasn't really Karen, but everyone in the new subdivision just called her that. She wore the role like a badge of honor. Platinum blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, clipboard permanently attached to her arm. HOA president, self-elected and unchallenged. She didn't just oversee the community, she was the community. I had met her once, reluctantly. She came striding across my property line without so much as a knock, demanding to know why my dwelling didn't comply with HOA appearance standards. I politely informed her my cabin wasn't in the HOA jurisdiction. In fact, it predated the entire development. She didn't like that answer. From that moment on, she made it her mission to remind me that she was close by. Constant reports to the county about supposed zoning violations, drones flying too close to my property, even HOA newsletters left on my doorstep with a passive-aggressive note, "You're still welcome to join, for now." I brushed it off. My land was privately owned, and I had the permits to prove it. I'd even wired the cabin with a state-of-the-art off-grid solar and generator combo, with a backup battery bank and a security system that sent alerts directly to my phone. Living this far out, you had to expect the occasional raccoon or nosy tourist. What I hadn't expected was someone trying to steal my power. The first sign was subtle. One morning, I noticed my generator fuel levels were lower than expected. Not impossible, but odd. I chalked it up to maybe overusing the heater during a particularly cold night. Then came the blackout. It happened just after sunset. My generator should have kicked in automatically, but instead, everything went dark. I walked outside with a flashlight and checked the system. The battery was drained. The solar had been disconnected, and the generator was gone. Just gone. It didn't make sense. Who would come all the way out here to steal a heavy, bolted-down generator? I followed the tire tracks, muddy and fresh, which led through the woods directly to the HOA development. My stomach turned. I didn't want to believe it, but every clue pointed to one person, Karen. Still, I needed proof. Over the next few days, I installed a discrete motion sensor camera on a tree overlooking the path between my cabin and the HOA's property. I also made a few upgrades to my system: a backup generator, smaller, portable, but well hidden, a decoy extension cable leading to nowhere, and, most importantly, a small yet powerful anti-theft module I'd bought years ago but never used, the kind designed for remote sites and cabins like mine. It delivered a non-lethal but memorable shock, enough to deter animals, and more importantly, thieves. It was now clear I couldn't ignore this anymore. Karen had crossed the line. This wasn't just about rules or neighborhood petty power plays. This was theft, intrusion, tampering with someone's private power supply in the middle of the woods. It was dangerous, reckless, and I wasn't about to let it go unanswered. I waited. 2 nights later, it happened again. Around 1:34 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. The feed showed a shadowy figure emerging from the trees, high-end yoga pants, fleece jacket, flashlight beam bouncing erratically. It was Karen. She wasn't even being subtle. She made a beeline for the decoy cable, pulled something from her backpack, a three-way splitter, and connected it to a thick orange extension cord. Trailing back into the woods, she wasn't just stealing my power, she'd wired it to feed her house. As soon as the connection was made, the trap triggered. A flash, a pop, and Karen stumbled backward, flailing, her flashlight flying into the brush. She screamed, though the camera's audio was muted, and collapsed on the ground, twitching slightly before scrambling to her feet and vanishing back into the dark woods. I stared at the screen in disbelief, equal parts horrified and vindicated. The next morning, I retrieved the footage, saved it to 3 different backup drives, and even sent a copy to a lawyer friend in case Karen tried anything stupid. I checked the generator and cables. Everything was intact. The anti-theft system had worked exactly as advertised. But the real surprise came that afternoon, when a county code enforcement officer showed up at my door. He looked uncomfortable, apologetic. Even apparently, Karen had filed a complaint against me, alleging that I'd electrified public utilities with malicious intent. I showed him the footage, the permits, the warning signs posted around the generator site, and the fact that the generator and cables were entirely on my land. His expression changed about halfway through the video. By the end, he just nodded, said he'd be filing a report, and left without another word. That should have been the end of it. But if I'd learned anything about Karen by now, it was that she wasn't done, not by a long shot. And this time, she wasn't coming alone. Retaliation in the pines from the story. HOA Karen steals my cabin generator power. Didn't know it's wired to shock intruders like her. The calm that followed the incident was deceptive, like the quiet before a mountain storm. After the county officer left, I spent the rest of the day securing my property, double-checking the locks on my storage shed, inspecting the fence line that separated my cabin from the HOA development, and reviewing every inch of camera footage. For signs of tampering, Karen's intrusion had confirmed what I feared. She wasn't just nosy. She was dangerous. I didn't know if she'd suffered any lasting damage from the shock, but judging by the speed with which she vanished into the woods, I guessed she was mostly embarrassed. And people like Karen, petty tyrants clinging to their last scrap of control, don't take embarrassment lightly. The first sign of retaliation came 2 days later. I returned from a supply run in town to find my driveway blocked. 3 large black trash bags, full, reeking, and split open, had been dumped right at the turn-in, just behind the bend where the trees concealed the entrance. They weren't mine. I don't even use trash bags like that. A closer look confirmed the worst. The whole logo was printed on one of them. A pile of HOA community garbage had been deliberately dragged into the woods and dumped on my land. It wasn't just disrespect, it was a message. I spent the better part of an hour clearing the mess and took pictures of everything. If Karen wanted to start a war, she'd get one, but it wasn't going to play out the way she expected. I filed an official dumping report with the county, attached the photos, and mentioned her previous trespassing complaint. I didn't hold my breath. If small-town officials were slow to act on theft, they weren't likely to throw the book at someone for garbage. But I wasn't relying on the county. The next night, I installed 2 new security cameras, this time with IR night vision and 4K resolution. One covered the path Karen had used. The other faced the tree line closer to the HOA. I also rigged a motion-sensitive floodlight and quietly upgraded the anti-theft deterrents around my backup generator. A few harmless, but very loud, surprises were now waiting for the next unwanted visitor. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Karen to escalate for nights later. Motion alerts flooded my phone just past midnight. I opened the live feed, and there they were, not just Karen this time, but 2 other figures. Her husband, a mild-mannered, hunched man I'd only seen briefly before, and a younger man, probably their college-age son. The 3 of them stood at the edge of my property, whispering, scanning the area with flashlights. They'd come back, and this time, they were better prepared. Karen stayed behind as the 2 men crept forward, moving toward the decoy cable again. But I'd left a surprise this time, a metal toolbox filled with rocks, rigged with a fishing line to a tree branch. When the younger man tripped it, the box fell with a crash, the branch snapped, and a deafening series of firecrackers ignited. In a chain, a security measure I'd had since the early days of building the cabin. Meant to scare off bears, it worked just as well on suburban intruders. Panic erupted. The son yelped and ran. The husband dropped something, I later found. It was wire cutters, and sprinted after him. Karen screamed from the woods, clearly not expecting the ambush. They all vanished as the floodlights burst to life, bathing the scene in harsh white light. The camera caught everything. I sat in the cabin, watching the playback on loop. It was almost surreal. I wasn't used to dealing with this level of suburban spite. Out here, you expected wildlife, not HOA recon teams. But the footage was gold. Indisputable evidence that they'd crossed onto my land in the middle of the night. With tools and a plan, the next morning, I filed another police report. Still no response from law enforcement. They were probably overwhelmed or uninterested. But I uploaded the footage to a private cloud and started compiling a dossier. It was growing fast. Karen, however, didn't slow down. A week later, as I returned from a short hike, I noticed something strange. Surveyor flags. Tiny orange and pink plastic markers staked every 20 feet along the boundary between my land and the HOA's edge. Someone was trying to dispute the property line. That it was a classic HOA tactic. If they couldn't bully you out, they'd try to make your land their land. This time, though, they had picked the wrong person. I still had the original land deeds, the permits from the county, even the GPS coordinates from when I registered. The cabin, everything was rock solid. I took pictures of the flags, then calmly pulled every single one of them up and tossed them in a box. No need to get dramatic, not yet. Karen must have been watching, because within 2 hours, I heard the sound of a drone buzzing overhead. It circled my cabin, then hovered suspiciously close to the generator shed. I tracked it visually, and then pulled out the drone jammer I'd ordered last year. One click, and the buzzing stopped. The drone dropped like a dead fly, crashing into the gravel driveway with a pathetic thump. I retrieved it, carried it to the edge of the HOA trail, and left it perched on a stump with a sticky note. Private property. Stay OFF. At this point, Karen had tried dumping trash, stealing power, drone surveillance, and trespassing, and every time, she'd failed. But she wasn't just after electricity anymore. She wanted control. She hated that my cabin existed outside of her influence, that I represented something she couldn't regulate or fine into submission. And like any bad authority figure losing power, she was about to do something really stupid. I just didn't know how far she'd go, not yet. But I would soon. The fake violation notice from the story. HOA Karen steals my cabin generator power. Didn't know it's wired to shock intruders like her. It had been a tense few weeks since Karen's last nighttime trespassing stunt. While things had gone quiet, I knew it wasn't over. With people like her, silence didn't mean surrender. It meant scheming. And sure enough, just as I began to think I might finally enjoy some peace, it came, taped directly to my front door in a plastic sleeve. An official-looking envelope. Heavy paper. Red stamp on the corner. Immediate action required. I opened it slowly, instinctively snapping a photo first, just in case it later disappeared. The letter inside was thick, printed in serif font with HOA letterhead at the top. That same ridiculous mountain-themed logo. Pine trees, a wooden fence, a bear silhouette. All the things they'd paved over in the name of rustic luxury. The letter was titled, Violation Notice. Unauthorized structure and utility access. I read through the nonsense, paragraph after paragraph of legal-sounding jargon, accusing me of constructing an unapproved residence, violating community aesthetic ordinances, and most outrageously, harnessing shared power infrastructure without HOA consent. There was even a fine listed, $14,700, due within 14 days to avoid further action. It ended with a threat of property seizure and HOA-sanctioned removal. If the issue wasn't resolved, I nearly laughed. Instead, I took a deep breath, scanned the entire letter, and started making calls. First, my attorney friend, the one I'd already sent the footage to. Then, the county clerk. Just to confirm what I already knew, the HOA had absolutely no jurisdiction over my property. My land was outside their boundary lines. Recorded and filed years before the subdivision was ever conceived. The generator. Cabin, everything to 100% legal and registered. The HOA had zero power here. This letter was pure fiction, but Karen had crossed into serious territory now. Falsifying legal documents, attempting to fine a non-member, threatening property seizure. These weren't just HOA games anymore. This was a direct attempt to intimidate and defraud. Still, I waited. I wanted to see how far she was willing to take this charade. The next day, a new surprise. A pair of compliance officers in khakis and polos showed up at the edge of my driveway. Clipboards in hand, they stood around awkwardly, trying to look official. I didn't go out to meet them. I simply watched from my porch and recorded everything. They eventually stapled another notice to a tree and walked off, clearly uncomfortable. The notice was another copy of the same violation letter, now with an added line, "Final warning." I laughed this time, out loud, when I retrieved the paper. I saw something new, a QR code linking to a payment portal. Out of curiosity, I scanned it. It led to a bootleg website, CASCADIA Forest HOA-compliance.org. Bare bones, sloppy, a single page with a payment window for fines, no login, no legal disclaimers, not even HTTPS encryption. It was a scam. Karen had literally set up a fake fine system to squeeze money from a property she didn't own. I made a video compiling everything, the fake letters, the camera footage of the trespassers, the garbage dump, the drone drop, and now the fake website. I didn't post it online. Not yet, but I sent it to a few local contacts. One happened to be a retired sheriff's deputy. He didn't think it was funny. Keep documenting. He said, "You might need this all in court." But I wasn't waiting for court. I had a plan of my own. That weekend, I posted my own notices, laminated, bright yellow, and nailed to every tree along my property line. They read, "Private property, not subject to HOA regulation. All trespassers will be recorded and prosecuted. Generator area is electrified and monitored. Do not touch." Then I upgraded the system again. This time, I wired a dummy panel, designed to look like a main power relay, with a contact-based alert system. If touched, it would send a signal to my phone and emit a loud klaxon noise from a hidden speaker, harmless but terrifyingly loud, just in case someone ignored the warnings, and someone did. Just 3 nights later, another alert hit my phone to 47 a.m. I opened the feed. Karen, again. This time, she came alone. Hoodie up, flashlight taped red to avoid detection. She moved, faster than before, heading straight toward the generator shed like she'd rehearsed the route. Clearly, she thought she knew what she was doing. She reached the relay panel, reached out, grabbed the handle. The scream that followed could have startled the wildlife 3 counties over. The alert system roared to life. Klaxons, flashing strobe lights, motion-triggered floodlights. The whole setup. She dropped to the ground and scrambled backward like she'd touched a live wire, which she hadn't, this time. But she didn't know that. I watched her stumble into the woods, gasping, tripping over brush, and nearly losing her shoes in the mud. It was beautiful, pure karma. I saved the footage, added it to the growing folder I'd started calling Karen Dossier. The next morning, I sent a formal cease and desist letter via certified mail, with the full legal support of my attorney, friend, to the HOA headquarters, addressed to the president, Karen herself. It included printed screenshots, county maps, legal citations, and a clear warning: any further action against my property would be considered harassment, trespassing, and attempted fraud. I expected her to fold, but instead, she escalated again. This time, she brought in a contractor. The following Monday, a white utility truck pulled up near the HOA trail entrance. 2 men got out, unloaded surveying equipment, and started marking lines on my side of the tree line. I approached from a distance, filming the whole thing. When I asked who sent them, they mumbled something about rezoning prep work and tried to act like they didn't know who Karen was. I showed them the actual property line, the recorded documents, and warned them they were trespassing. They left quickly, but it was clear Karen wasn't giving up. She was trying to manufacture some legal loophole. if she couldn't control my land by regulation. Maybe she thought she could absorb it by manipulation. She didn't know I was already 10 steps ahead. And when she made her next move, the one she thought would finally break me, it would turn into her biggest mistake yet. Karen's contractor crosses the line from the story. HOA Karen steals my cabin generator power. Didn't know it's wired to shock intruders like her. The audacity was unmatched, even for Karen, after trespassing, stealing electricity, dumping garbage, faking legal notices, and getting zapped more than once. She still wasn't done. Her latest tactic had been to send in a pair of contractors to stake flags on my property. Harmless enough at first glance, but I knew this was groundwork for something bigger. Karen didn't do small things. She built toward chaos like it was a pyramid scheme. And sure enough, the next week, it escalated. Again. It started on a Wednesday morning. I was out back chopping wood when I heard the unmistakable sound of heavy machinery. Not a lawnmower or a weed whacker, a backhoe. The rumble echoed through the trees. I dropped the axe and made my way through the brush toward the HOA property line. There it was, a large yellow excavator parked just 20 feet from my boundary. A crew of 3 men, including the same from before, stood beside it. One held a clipboard. Another was laying out spray paint markers on the ground. And standing next to them like a smug general, surveying her battlefield, was Karen. She didn't look at me, just pointed toward a row of trees, my trees. The plan clicked into place. She was attempting to install a utility trench, one that would run directly through my land. A fake easement she must have invented, claiming access for community upgrades or shared lines. It was a bold lie. And now she had hired people to start digging through the middle of it. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I walked back to the cabin, pulled the SD cards from my security cameras, and documented the equipment, the crew, the plates on the truck, everything. I even checked the county records online again. Nothing had changed. No new permits, no easement applications, no infrastructure notices. This was entirely rogue. By noon, the excavator had rolled across the property line, exactly 15 feet in. A patch of ground near my generator system had been spray painted with a giant orange X. That was my line. I called the sheriff's office, not the non-emergency line this time. The main dispatch. I told them heavy equipment was trespassing and actively damaging my property. The operator seemed skeptical until I mentioned that I had multiple pieces of video evidence, previous harassment reports, and a legal cease and desist already in motion. They promised to send someone. In the meantime, I made my way toward the scene and stood directly in the excavator's path. Karen noticed. She broke from the group, storming toward me with her ever-present binder in one hand and a smug expression pasted on her face. She held out a folded sheet of paper, another fake permit, this time printed to resemble county infrastructure approval. But the seal was wrong, the department name was wrong, and the signatures completely made up. I didn't take the paper. I didn't say a word. I simply raised my phone and filmed everything, her posture, the claim she made about pre-approved plans, her instructions to the workers to keep digging. The moment her voice hit a shrill peak, a white SUV pulled into the dirt trail. The sheriff's deputy had arrived. Karen's face faltered. The deputy was young, maybe mid-30s, but he had the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen enough suburban drama to know when something stank. He listened patiently as Karen launched into her monologue, all about community beautification projects and non-compliant structures and shared grid access. When she was done, he turned to me. I calmly handed him the packet I'd prepared: property deeds, boundary maps, photos of the excavator crossing the line, and a USB drive with video footage of every incident leading up to today. He spent 20 minutes reviewing it all. Then he asked the contractor to produce permits. The man fumbled, clearly nervous, and said Karen handled all that. That's when things changed. The deputy told everyone to stop work immediately. He asked Karen to step aside. She protested loudly until he mentioned filing a formal report for trespassing and property damage. Suddenly, Karen was quiet. The crew packed up. The excavator reversed back across the property line and rumbled down the trail. Karen stood with her arms crossed, seething. But I wasn't done. That night, I posted motion-activated signs along the full length of the shared boundary, monitored by video. Do not cross. I installed a new trail cam, hidden this time, to catch any attempts at tampering. I even added a low-frequency vibration sensor to the soil around my generator's concrete pad. If anyone tried to dig again, I'd know instantly. Karen must have realized she'd been cornered. For the next 3 days, nothing happened. No noise, no letters, no drone buzzing, silence. And then, as if she'd been waiting for a quieter way to retaliate, the sabotage began. It started with my generator system acting strangely, lights flickering, voltage drops, then unexplained shutdowns. I checked everything: fuel lines, wiring, solar inverter. It all looked fine. But the battery charge was off, suspiciously low. I reviewed the camera footage and noticed something disturbing. Around 10 a.m., a faint movement near the generator. Too far for a clear shot, but just enough to see a shadow crouching. Then slipping away into the woods, I inspected the generator again, this time thoroughly. And there it was, a small, almost imperceptible cut in one of the insulation wraps around the main output wire. Sabotage. They weren't trying to steal power anymore. They were trying to destroy the system, and if I hadn't caught it in time, it could have caused a serious short, maybe even a fire. Karen had moved from theft to active property damage. That night, I rewired the anti-tamper system. Not just a shock pad this time, but a combination of noise deterrents, hidden trail cameras, and a pressure sensor directly under the gravel in front of the generator shed. If anyone stepped foot near it, not only would they be caught on camera, but the alarm would send a ping straight to my phone and sound off a 120 decibel siren. I also called my lawyer friend again. We began drafting a formal restraining order, but as I would soon learn, Karen wasn't ready to stop, because her next move wasn't just petty, or legal, or underhanded. Her next move was dangerous, and this time, it would put her in real trouble. The night everything exploded from the story. HOA Karen steals my cabin generator power. Didn't know it's wired to shock intruders like her. They say desperate people do stupid things. And Karen was well past desperate. Her attempts to manipulate, trespass, lie, and intimidate had all failed. Every move she made only deepened her own mess, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. The thing about control freaks is they can't handle the idea of someone living outside their system, especially not right next door, thriving. Without them, I thought the sabotage of the generator wiring would be the climax, the final crescendo of her suburban campaign. I was wrong. What happened next could have burned the entire forest down. It started with a noise, a sharp, metallic clink just after 3 a.m. I was sleeping lightly, as I'd gotten used to doing ever since this nightmare began. My phone lit up with an alert, vibration detected, generator pad. Seconds later, the motion sensor camera picked up movement, someone approaching the shed again. At first, I thought it was the usual, another trespass, maybe a tool in hand, another idiotic attempt to cut into the system. I pulled up the live feed, and then my blood ran cold. It wasn't a tool, it was a gas can. The figure on screen was definitely Karen, hoodie up again, face barely visible, but the body, language, the gait, the posture, unmistakable. She moved with purpose. She poured something from the red canister around the back of the shed. Then she took something from her pocket, I couldn't tell what, and held it near the foundation. I bolted up, grabbed my flashlight and sidearm, and ran outside before she could strike the match or flick the lighter, or whatever it was. By the time I made it to the tree line, she was already gone. But the smell lingered, unmistakable. Gasoline, freshly poured. I did a full sweep of the area. The gas had been dumped in a circle around the generator pad, likely with the intent to destroy it entirely. I checked my backup cameras, the hidden ones I'd mounted in the brush, and confirmed it. Karen had spent less than 2 minutes on site. She moved like someone who had done this sort of thing before, efficient, cold. I called the sheriff's office again. This time, I didn't ask for a courtesy visit. I told them what happened, what she'd brought, and that I believed it was an attempted arson. They said they'd dispatch someone immediately. Then I sent over the footage, all of it, from the second she stepped onto the property to the moment she disappeared back toward the HOA trail. While waiting, I reviewed the footage over and over, each time noticing something new. The slight limp in her step, the way she kept checking over her shoulder, the precise way she avoided the floodlight zones. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was planned, calculated. By the time the deputies arrived, I had multiple backups ready, cloud, flash drives, hard copies. I wasn't taking chances. To their credit, they took it seriously, very seriously. The senior deputy recognized Karen immediately. Apparently, mine wasn't the first complaint lodged against her, just the most extreme. They documented the attempted sabotage, took statements, collected the gas can I found discarded behind a bush, and marked the case for escalation. They also asked me a pointed question: would you be willing to press felony charges? If it comes to that, I didn't hesitate. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up watching the monitors, refreshing camera feeds, checking sensor logs, but nothing more happened. No retaliation, no counterattack, just silence. But the fallout came fast. The very next day, Karen's pristine white SUV was missing from her driveway. By noon, a different car, dark blue, unmarked, tinted windows, was parked out front. A county investigator. By the end of the week, I heard through a local contact that Karen had been formally questioned and that a temporary protective order had been filed against her. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't, because before the sheriff could finish his report, and before the county could make the restraining order permanent, Karen made one last, catastrophic mistake. 2 nights later, another alert pinged, not from the generator, but from the roof of the cabin. I'd installed a sensor there weeks earlier, paranoid that someone might try something from above, a drone, or worse. When I pulled up the feed, I saw the shadowy figure again, same hoodie, this time carrying a coil of wire. She was trying to tap directly into my solar panel wiring. I didn't even leave the cabin this time. I flipped a breaker that triggered the alarm system's final failsafe, a combination of strobe lights, sirens, and a verbal warning blaring from hidden speakers. You are trespassing on private property. Law enforcement has been notified. Leave immediately. Karen froze, looked straight into the nearest camera, and then she ran. But it was too late. The camera had her face in full detail. The sheriff came out the next morning. I handed him the new footage. This time, he didn't just file a report. He made a call. Later that day, I watched from a distance as two patrol cars pulled into the HOA road and stopped in front of Karen's house. She came out, arms crossed, visibly angry, and tried to talk her way out of it. But the deputies weren't listening. She was placed in cuffs, loaded into the car, and driven away. I never saw her on the property again. The charges were serious: trespassing, vandalism, attempted arson, attempted theft of utilities, and violation of a protective order. Word spread fast. The HOA board quietly removed her as president. Her house went dark. The for sale sign appeared within a week. She was gone. But the damage had already been done to her reputation, her fake authority, and her fantasy of control. As for me, the cabin stood, untouched. My generator system, now upgraded with full redundancy, hummed like a dream. The solar panels worked better than ever, and every single security camera stayed exactly where it belonged, watching. Because people like Karen don't always disappear forever, and if she ever came back, I'd be ready. The HOA tries to cover it up from the story. HOA Karen steals my cabin generator power. Didn't know it's wired to shock intruders like her. Karen may have been gone, but her shadow still lingered like smoke after a wildfire. Her house sat empty, blinds drawn, a pale for sale sign leaning crookedly in the yard. Rumors spread faster than wildfire through the HOA community. Some claimed she was traveling, others whispered about a nervous breakdown. But I knew the truth. She'd been arrested, booked, charged. And the HOA, they weren't taking it well. See, Karen wasn't just their president. She was their figurehead, the one who started the HOA, filed the paperwork, rallied the neighbors into believing they needed rules to maintain property values in what used to be nothing but forest. She built that HOA the same way she built drama, with lies, intimidation, and a clipboard. Without her, the power vacuum was immediate, but instead of disbanding, the remaining board members circled the wagons. They started by quietly removing all mention of her from their website. The president's message tab disappeared. The newsletters stopped including her signature. It was like she'd been erased. Then they made their move a letter delivered, not to me, but to every single HOA member. Someone slipped a copy into my hands, not officially, of course, but anonymously, folded twice, slipped under my truck windshield while I was in town. It was labeled Community Clarification regarding recent events. The contents were insulting, if not outright delusional. They claimed Karen had voluntarily stepped down for personal reasons, that there had been misunderstandings between her and a neighboring landowner, and that certain media circulating online misrepresented the nature of the dispute. The letter ended with a warning. HOA members were to avoid further speculation, posting on social media, or engagement in defamatory commentary. Defamatory, as if I had made all of this up. What they didn't know was that by then, the truth was already out, far beyond their little mountain community. Because I had finally uploaded my video. Not the raw security footage, but a full, documentary-style breakdown. Karen's first trespass, her fake violation notices, the garbage dumping, the theft of generator power. Her full-blown sabotage attempts, and of course, the attempted arson, with footage showing her caught red-handed. I blurred faces where necessary. I kept the narration clear and factual. I didn't name the HOA, not directly, but I didn't have to. The video blew up. Within 2 days, it had 2.1 million views. Comments flooded in, thousands of them. People shared similar stories of HOA overreach, petty tyrants with too much time and not enough authority. Some even recognized Karen. Others speculated on where she might end up next. A few offered to buy me a drink for standing my ground. The HOA board, predictably, panicked. Their quiet cover-up didn't hold. Local news outlets picked up the video. A regional investigative blog ran a piece called HOA Horror Story, When the President Goes Too Far, linking county arrest records with leaked HOA meeting notes that confirmed Karen had unilaterally authorized actions against my property. The final nail came when a former board member, apparently fed up with the silence, resigned and posted a lengthy online confession. In it, he confirmed that Karen had created the fake violation letters herself using HOA funds, paid the contractor under the table with no board approval, falsified the shared utility claim by submitting fake documents to other members, deleted security footage from HOA cameras that showed her entering my land. He ended his post with 5 words that summed up the entire disaster. We knew. We did nothing. Public pressure turned into legal pressure. The HOA faced multiple lawsuits from within their own community. Homeowners filed to dissolve the board entirely, citing misappropriation of funds and gross negligence. The county began reviewing all past permits the HOA had approved and revoked several on the spot. Suddenly, nobody wanted to be associated with Karen's legacy. Meanwhile, my life returned to something resembling normal. The cabin was safe, the generator stronger than ever, and my security system now so extensive I could probably detect a squirrel sneezing. In the next county, neighbors who had once sided with Karen avoided eye contact when they saw me in town. A few quietly apologized. One even dropped off homemade jerky and a handwritten note that read, simply, "Sorry for the drama. We didn't know." I accepted it, but I didn't forget. Because people like Karen don't work alone, they thrive in environments that tolerate their behavior. She didn't become the HOA monster overnight. She was enabled, allowed, backed up until it was no longer convenient. But in the end, it was her own obsession with control that brought her down. The same overconfidence that made her think she could steal my power, vandalize my systems, and walk away untouched, made her underestimate just how prepared I was. She thought the off-grid guy in the woods was easy to push around. She didn't know I had wired my entire world to respond the moment someone tried. She didn't know my generator, the same one she tried to siphon and sabotage, had built-in failsafes designed for far worse than a nosy suburban tyrant, and she sure didn't know that every step she took deeper into my land was being recorded and backed up in triplicate. In the end, justice didn't come in a courtroom. It came in the form of a viral truth she couldn't bury. And now, Karen's gone. The HOA is imploding. My property is quiet again. The generator hums. The lights stay on. And the woods are finally still. Just the way I like it.